Hey guys, tonight we slip silently down cobbled alleys, past flickering torches and sleeping hounds, into the shadowy world of medieval assassins, a life far less glamorous than video games or action movies would ever dare to show. You imagine a hooded figure poised on a rooftop, blades gleaming in the moonlight, right? But the truth? You're wet, cold, wearing someone else's moldy boots, and your last meal was half a pigeon you borrowed from a cat. You're not some legendary ghost in the night. You're an underpaid grunt with a limp and a really bad back from crouching in barrels all day. And yeah, spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. I love seeing how far these sleepy stories travel. You trudge through the mud again. The soles of your boots have holes, and the water seeping in feels like it's judging you. This is your third assignment, and you're already starting to wonder if professional assassination was really your calling, or just a weird phase you committed to too hard. The town is quiet tonight, unnervingly so. You're here to deliver justice, by which you mean stabbing a corrupt merchant in the neck because someone richer told you to. The guy's crime? Raising bread prices. Or maybe cheating at dice, or maybe nothing at all. Honestly, they didn't tell you much, and you've learned not to ask. Being a medieval assassin isn't about glory or stealth kills with a satisfying thunk sound. It's mostly about ulcers, splinters, and an overwhelming sense that you'll die anonymously in a latrine trench. You're disposable. The guy before you was caught last week. They found him in a barrel of pickled herring, arms folded like he was trying to make peace with the gods of bad career decisions. You step into a tavern pretending to be a drunk. You're not pretending hard. You are drunk, partially because that's the only way to stay warm, and partially because no one offers you health insurance in this line of work. You scan the room. Your contact is supposed to be here, the one with the blue feather in his cap. You see 3 blue feathers, one's asleep, one's a woman twice your size. And the last is a hat stand. Nobody teaches you these things in assassin orientation, because there isn't one. There's no union, no training montage, no ancient codex passed down through generations. Your trainer was a guy with one eye and no fingers. You know what he told you? Don't die stupid. Then he died. Stupidly. The idea of medieval assassin glamour was invented by people who've never tried to sneak across a castle moat filled with leeches, only to trip on a rock and fall face first into a sheep carcass. That happened to you last month. But it's not all bad, right? You get to travel, usually in hay carts, you see castles from the dungeon, you meet interesting people, mostly when you're killing them, or getting tortured by them, or both. You're not even sure anymore. Everything smells like damp wool and fear. Tonight's job is simple. Get into the merchant's house, make it look like an accident, and get out before anyone notices. So naturally, nothing goes to plan. First, the door's locked. Then the window is guarded. And then you realize the dog is not sleeping. It just blinked very slowly. You're now locked in eye contact with a beast twice your size, drooling like it just found out you smelled like pigeon. You toss it the salted meat you brought. It sniffs it, sneezes, and then bites your arm anyway. You now have 2 jobs. Kill the merchant and not bleed out. By the time you reach his room, he's not even there. He's at a brothel, and his wife is home, also with a knife and a temper. Historians still argue whether medieval assassins were trained professionals or just desperate men with pointy things and a lack of better options. You suspect it's mostly the second one. You escape by pretending to be a chair. Don't ask. It worked. Barely. You now have a sprained wrist, a bruised ego, and the job is technically incomplete. You'll still get paid, in theory, assuming the client isn't also dead by tomorrow morning. That happens a lot. You crawl back to the safe house, which is a strong word for hole in a wall, behind a pigsty. You lie down next to your bedmate, a pile of rags, possibly alive. You try to sleep, but your brain replays everything. The dog bite, the knife throw, the awkward moment when you apologize to a broomstick because you thought it was a monk. Being a medieval assassin doesn't come with honor, or purpose. It comes with foot fungus, bad dreams, and the growing suspicion that your legacy will be unnamed man stabbed near chicken coop. Still, you made it through another night. That counts. In this line of work, every morning is a miracle, or a sign you overslept and someone's about to stab you for a change. You wake up to the sound of someone vomiting outside the safe house. Comforting. It's not even sunrise, and already the world smells like spoiled cabbage and fear. You sit up, your back cracking like old timber. Congratulations. You've survived another night, barely. Your first thought isn't about breakfast. It's about why your contact didn't show last night. That man with the blue feather, wasn't he supposed to confirm the hit? Wasn't he supposed to not be a hat stand? Turns out, the real contact was there. You just didn't recognize him because he shaved. You'd only ever seen him with a beard thick enough to host birds. And now, clean shaven, smelling faintly of lavender, and very upset you didn't complete the job. The meeting happens in a butcher's stall next to a pig's head that's been giving you side-eye. The contact drops a note wrapped in greasy parchment and walks away. No greeting, no instructions, just the words. Next time, no witnesses. So now you've been demoted or promoted. It's hard to tell in this business. You're to be tested, prove your worth, or be removed. And removed in assassin terms usually means buried face down in an unmarked bog. You sigh and wander back into town. You try to blend in, but your limp and visible daggers say otherwise. A town guard eyes you for a moment too long. You force a cough and pretend to be a sick monk. It works. People scatter. Sickness is more terrifying than daggers around here. Now, let's talk about how you got this job. Because, plot twist, you didn't apply. You were recruited, sort of. One day, you were sweeping horse dung outside a tavern. The next, a man in a cloak asked if you knew how to keep secrets. You said yes. He handed you a blade and said, "Congratulations, you're now an operative." You asked what that meant. He said, "You'll find out if you survive." That was 3 months ago. There's no interview, no aptitude test, no "are you emotionally ready to murder someone in their nightgown" form to fill out. They see a lost soul, hungry enough to kill, desperate enough not to ask questions. That's it. That's the whole vetting process. You never even chose this name. They gave you one. Black Moth. You wanted something cooler. Night Serpent. Silent Fang. Instead, you sound like an unpopular candle scent. Your guild isn't really a guild. It's 4 people, one of whom might be a ghost. Another is an old woman who just knits and whispers Latin. She might be the leader. No one's sure. You were supposed to be trained, but training consisted of: here's how to not stab yourself. Avoid chainmail. It makes noise. If you get caught, we never knew you. Oh, and don't forget the 3 principles of the Assassin's Code. Don't get seen. Don't get caught. Don't forget to lie if you do. Simple, right? Too bad everyone around you is paranoid, drunk, or both. One guy you were sent to shadow accused you of being a witch. You had to fake a seizure to escape. You're still not sure why that worked. Now, back to the street. You're following a new target, a local priest accused of heresy and tax evasion. Mostly tax evasion. You duck into alleys, dodge chicken carts, and try not to gag when you pass the fishmonger's stand. The priest walks like a man with nothing to hide. That's suspicious in itself. You tail him to the cathedral. He goes inside. You follow. Eventually, the pews creak, candles flicker, someone coughs behind you. You cough louder just to blend in. He's praying, loudly, passionately, possibly to avoid hearing your boots squeak. You approach. You freeze. You forgot the plan again. You whisper your emergency line, confess your sins. It's supposed to confuse them. Instead, he turns and asks, which ones? Awkward. You panic. You drop your blade. It clatters. He screams. You scream. A nun throws a Bible at your head. You flee. Again. You trip on a candle stand and nearly catch fire. You escape out to the vestry window, your dignity left behind on the floor next to Leviticus. Later that night, you report the failure to your contact. He shrugs. Happens. He hands you a loaf of bread as compensation. It's mostly mold. You eat it anyway. Historians still argue whether organized assassin groups in medieval Europe were truly elite or just desperate thugs with occasional luck. Judging by your current state, Covered in wax, bruised, and hiding in a chimney, you lean toward the second theory. You dream that night of simpler times, when your biggest worry was which stable to clean, when horses didn't judge you, when your shoes matched. But that's behind you now. You're a black moth, sort of. And tomorrow, you'll try again. Or maybe you'll fall into a well. Either way, history probably won't remember your name. Morning arrives, though honestly, it feels like yesterday never ended. Your knees ache like they've been personally cursed by a very petty forest witch. You're supposed to meet the guild again. You call it a guild. It's just 4 lunatics and a guy named Toma who might actually be 2 raccoons in a cloak. You limp into the old mill where meetings happen. There's no door, just a burlap sack you push aside like it's a curtain in a very unsuccessful puppet show. Inside, candlelight, the smell of wet stone, and a bowl of turnips no one has ever touched but that somehow must be sacred. The leader, known only as Madame V, is stirring something ominous in a pot. It might be stew, it might be a spell, it might be someone's cousin. She doesn't greet you, she doesn't look up, she says without turning, "You failed the church job." You nod sheepishly. She adds, "We're sending you again, but this time with help." Help? Enter Dreg. Dreg is your new mentor. He's missing a finger, 3 teeth, and most of his soul. His breath smells like secrets and pickled onions. He tells you he's been in the business since kings were kids. His first lesson? Never trust a man with dry hands. You don't ask. The next job is supposed to be easy. A minor noble suspected of plotting against the local bishop. You're to break into his manor, find evidence, and if he's guilty, silence him. Easy, except Dreg insists you learn to blend in first. So, step 1, you become a servant. Yup, you, former stable boy turned alley stabber, are now scrubbing chamber pots and pretending to know what cutlery is for. Turns out, noble life is horrifying. You thought assassins had it bad? Try being the guy responsible for washing a duke's underwear. With your hands. In a frozen stream, while being watched by his horse, who clearly judges you. The noble himself is eccentric. He talks to paintings, he collects teeth, human, animal, you don't ask. He also hosts dinners that last 5 hours and involve debates about how many angels can dance on a duck's beak. Spoiler, the answer is never 0. There's always a duck involved. You're supposed to gather intel, so you sneak around the halls at night, listening behind doors. One night, you overhear something useful. He is plotting against the bishop. Also, he's deeply afraid of frogs. Bonus info? Dreg says it's time. "Strike tonight," he whispers dramatically, then immediately falls asleep mid-snore. You wait until midnight. You enter the noble's chambers, tiptoe, blade ready, and just as you raise it, he rolls over and mumbles, "Papa, no." What do you do with that? Emotional trauma mid-murder? You hesitate. And that's when the frog hops out from under the bed? Yes, a frog. A real one. You yelp, stumble backward, and knock over a suit of armor. The entire household wakes up thinking the castle's under siege. You dive out the window, into a moat. Again. You're soaking wet, freezing, and covered in green slime, possibly algae, possibly noble spit. Either way, you're humiliated. You make it back to the guild, shivering. Dreg says, "You live, then you learn." You glare at him. Historians still argue whether medieval assassins ever truly formed structured guilds or if it was more of a freelance, chaotic mess. Judging by the half-asleep Dreg and the fact that Madame V is now using a skull as a ladle, you suspect it's the latter. You try to sleep that night, but the rib you landed on in the moat keeps reminding you it's cracked. Also, you keep dreaming about frogs, talking ones, judging ones, wearing tiny bishop hats. Your next assignment is already on the table, literally. A parchment with a wax seal you'll never afford and an address written in blood. Or possibly wine. You lick it to check. Definitely wine. You sigh. Another day, another desperate lunge at death, reputation, or maybe just a warm meal. You thought being an assassin would make you dangerous, powerful, mysterious. Instead, you're the medieval equivalent of an unpaid intern with a knife and no dental plan. And yet, you keep going. Maybe it's hope, maybe it's desperation, maybe it's because the alternative is going back to the stables and that one horse who definitely remembered you fell in his manure bucket. Either way, you're still here. Barely. You know that saying, first impressions matter? Well, your first impression of this next mission is that it smells bad. Literally. The job requires infiltrating a tavern used by mercenaries and hired thugs, which sounds cool until you realize their idea of hygiene involves spitting in a bucket and calling it soap. Your target? A smuggler who's been selling forged church relics, things like St. Gertrude's spleen or Jesus' favorite tooth. He's made enemies in the wrong places, namely with a very real bishop who owns a very real executioner. But instead of summoning the law, they summoned you, because apparently you're cheaper. The tavern, appropriately named the Slumped Swan, is filled with loud voices, thick smoke, and the sort of men who've probably stabbed more people than they've read books. You enter disguised as a juggler. Yes, a juggler, Dreg insisted. You've never juggled a day in your life. So you fake a coughing fit, claim the plague, and get ushered into the corner while everyone avoids eye contact. Honestly, it works better than juggling ever would. You sip weak ale and scan the room. There he is, your target, greasy hair, crooked smile, and a necklace made of finger bones. Human? Maybe. You hope not. He's laughing with some mercs, loudly describing how he sold a toenail he swears came from St. Peter. You wait, you watch, you wait more. 4 hours later, he's still talking. You've learned nothing except that he really hates ducks and once dated a woman who bit him during dinner. Not in a fun way. Finally, he stumbles off to the latrine. This is your chance. You follow, quietly, rehearsing the plan. Wait till he's mid-pee, use the garrote, drag the body into the alley, disappear. Simple. Except he brought a bodyguard. A big one, named Odo. Odo doesn't pee. He just stands there, arms crossed, staring at the door like he's trying to see through it with sheer hatred. You whisper, Plan B? But Plan B was never written. Dreg just winked and said, use your instincts. Great. So you do the only thing that makes sense. You start yelling about ducks, loudly, wildly. Did you say ducks? I hate ducks. They stole my brother. It causes just enough confusion that the target bolts out of the latrine with his pants half down. You chase. Odo chases you. Someone yells, the juggler's possessed, and throws a stool. You all end up in the alley behind the tavern where the target trips over a stray cat and knocks himself unconscious against a pile of barrels. Odo skids to a halt, looks at the body, looks at you, and, for reasons unknown, just shrugs and walks away. You have no idea what just happened. You just know you now have a body to deal with and no plan for disposal. You drag him behind a chicken coop, whisper, rest in questionable peace, and scrawl a false confession on his shirt. I stole relics. Ducks are devils. That'll confuse the constables for days. Back at the guild, Dreg applauds. Madame V nods once and hands you a slightly stale meat pie. That's your bonus. Not money, not praise, a pie. And you still eat it, because food is food and you haven't seen a vegetable in 2 weeks that didn't scream when poked. Historians still argue whether lower tier assassins were responsible for both the act of killing and covering it up themselves, or whether disposal was someone else's messy business. You now know the truth. If you want a body to vanish, you bribe a butcher and lie a lot. Or blame the ducks. That also works. You limp back to the safe house, pie in one hand, bruised ribs, complaining. Another night, another miracle survival. You pass a beggar who calls you sir. That's a first. You give him a bite of the pie, he calls you lord. You consider keeping him around for morale. Then he sneezes on you and walks off with your coin pouch. Figures. You collapse into your hay pile and let the sleep take you. Uneven, heavy, filled with dreams of talking chickens and relic salesman named Steve. And somewhere, in a nearby alley, a new contract is being nailed to a post. Your name's not on it yet, but it will be. It always is. You wake up with straw in your mouth, and a chicken staring directly into your soul. Not the worst morning you've had, but certainly not in the top 10. The guild has already moved on. You're the last one to rise. Dreg left behind half a boot, a moldy note that reads, "Don't wait up," and a piece of string that may or may not be cursed. You stretch, regret it instantly, then hobble out into the street to find your next mission posted on a tavern door like some sort of medieval Craigslist. The parchment reads, Target, Lord Aldrich of Windmere. Crime, treason probably. Method, discretion preferred. Pay, negotiable, bring your own rope. You squint, you don't know who wrote that, but the last part feels personal. So here you are, infiltrating a minor noble's estate again. You're starting to think someone out there wants you to be caught, or just really enjoys seeing you fall into pig troughs, which, spoiler alert, you will, again, twice. You travel for 2 days on foot, sleeping in barns, dodging toll collectors, and getting chased by a goose who seems to recognize you from a previous job. Geese never forget. Windmere Estate rises on a hill like it thinks it's important. You approach just as the sun sets, casting long shadows across manicured hedges and fountains that smell suspiciously like soup. Discretion, they said. So naturally, you sneak in through the kitchen, because no one ever guards the cheese pantry. You hide behind a shelf of pickled onions and wait. Your plan is simple. Get in, find proof of treason, get out, then do the stabbing if necessary. No point killing a man if he's just guilty of being annoying. Although, in some kingdoms, that's enough. You listen, servants gossip, maids chatter, footmen complain. Eventually, you hear it. Said Aldrich's been meeting foreigners by moonlight, carrying maps and whispering about ships. Bingo. You follow the conversation to its source. A footman with a bad limp and a very loose tongue. He doesn't see you crouch behind a basket of turnips. You've gotten better at blending in, or the turnips have gotten bigger. Later that night, you slink into the noble's study, candles still burning, maps on the desk, letters with wax seals you don't recognize, treason confirmed. Probably. You pocket one letter just in case. And that's when you hear the door open. You freeze, hide behind a curtain. It smells like wet dog and forgotten ambition. Lord Aldrich himself walks in. Alone, he sits, starts writing, humming. You wait some more. Then your foot falls asleep, like completely. You shift, the curtain twitches. He turns. Who's there? You panic, you lunge. He screams. You scream. The candle gets knocked over. Flames everywhere. You wrestle. He bites your arm. You slap him with a rolled up map. He falls backward over a stool and hits his head. Silence. You didn't even stab him. Historians still argue whether assassination attempts in medieval politics were driven by true justice, or just a chaotic mix of power struggles, paranoia, and bad timing. You now believe it's mostly the last one. You douse the fire with a chamber pot, thankfully unused, grab the incriminating letter, and leap out to the window, into a fountain full of cold stew. Chicken, mostly. Possibly duck. You flee. The letter is soggy but legible. The client is pleased. Pays you in silver and something called blessing crumbs. You don't ask. Back at the safe house, Dreg is waiting. Heard you lit a man's beard on fire. It was an accident. Better than poison, more dramatic. You nod. He hands you a flask. You earned this. You take a sip. It burns, like shame and vinegar. You sleep that night dreaming of maps, curtains, and nobles with very flammable beards. Your job is far from over. You're still broke, still cold, and still uncertain whether you're getting better or just luckier. But for now, you're alive. And in this line of work, that's saying something. You wake up in a puddle of your own drool and someone else's ale, probably Dreg's. He has a habit of drinking half a flagon and using your bed as a coaster. The parchment at your feet is your next job, sealed with black wax and the words, payment negotiable, risk, extreme, employer, anonymous, time, now. Ah yes, negotiable usually means we'll pay you in rotten vegetables and possibly betrayal. And anonymous means someone with way too much money and way too little shame. You open it, the job, kill a banker. You blink, not a corrupt noble, not a bishop, a banker. just a guy who moves coins around and tells peasants their goats aren't good collateral. You're given zero details, just a name, Lorenzo, and a town, Torthwick, which sounds made up, and probably is. 3 days of travel, 2 nights of rain, 1 bedbug infested inn later, you arrive. Torthwick is a mess. Half the buildings lean like they're drunk, the other half are burnt. You ask around for Lorenzo. Everyone goes silent, like you just said the name of a demon. 1 child throws a cabbage at you. That feels personal. Turns out, Lorenzo's more than a banker. He's a loan shark, and not the friendly, sure, pay me back whenever type Anaja. I know if it's more like, you missed a copper, I now own your niece and your goat and possibly your soul. You find his place. A towering stone house with bars on the windows and an actual moat. A moat. Not for defense, just for ego. You scout it, guards, dogs, a bell system, tripwires, 1 guy with a crossbow who looks like he hasn't blinked since last harvest. Discretion? Gone. This is war. Y'all mean. You plan, you observe, you take notes. You get caught. Yes, caught. Not doing anything illegal, just standing too long near the moat while muttering to yourself about ducks. A guard grabs you, drags you inside. You lie. You say you're a wandering herbalist. You even offer him a jar of spicy nettle cream. He believes you. Sort of. They throw you into Lorenzo's private dungeon to wait for questioning. You take stock, moldy straw, 1 rat, a bucket, and someone in the next cell who thinks they're Charlemagne. You spend the night listening to them debate tax policy with a rock, not the weirdest cellmate you've had. Morning comes. You fake a seizure, the guard panics, opens a door, and you hit him with the bucket. It's not elegant, it's not graceful, but it works. You stumble into the hallway, steal a guard's cloak, and blend in long enough to find Lorenzo's chambers. There he is, counting coins, shirtless, covered in gold chains like a deeply confused dragon. You hesitate, he looks normal, slightly pathetic, definitely oily. Then he says, to no one, all debt is holy. Yeah, no, you do it. Quick, silent, and with a surprising lack of guilt. You leave a note beside him, debt repaid. Historians still argue whether assassins truly targeted economic figures, or if this is just a legend retroactively applied to explain sudden deaths during medieval debt crises. You're starting to think it's both. You escape through the servant's passage, bribe a mule driver with your last coin, and vanish into the fog. Back at the guild, Madame V is polishing a skull and humming a funeral dirge. She doesn't ask what happened. She just nods and says, "Good, you're still breathing." Dreg tosses you a pouch. It clinks, real silver, for once. You smell it, just in case. It's clean. You sit by the fire, knees aching, soul slightly lighter. Then the door slams open. A courier drops another letter. This one isn't sealed. It just says, "You're next." Dreg looks at you, raises an eyebrow, says nothing. You sigh. Welcome back to reality. No retirement plan, no pension, just one job after another until someone decides you're too much of a risk to keep breathing. Still, the silver is nice. You sleep with a dagger under your pillow. You dream of a world where assassins get dental, where moats are optional, where bankers don't say things like debt is holy. But mostly, you dream of never seeing another rat in a dungeon again. Spoiler, you will. You're dreaming of retirement, somewhere warm, maybe near the sea, a place where no one tries to poison your stew or stab you with a fork. But you wake up to Dreg kicking your ribs gently. "Get up, sunshine," he growls. "It's family time." That's alarming. The new job is in your hometown, a place you left years ago after one too many misunderstandings involving chickens, dice, and a minor baron's missing trousers. You haven't been back since, and now someone's paid to send you there on purpose. You trudge along the muddy road, stomach turning. It's not just that you hate the place, it's that the target is your uncle. Yes, your actual uncle, Sir Edric the Modest. A name so ironic, they once tried to rename him Sir Edric the Overcompensating, but he bought the entire village to make it illegal. Your mission is unclear. The note says, observe, confirm, eliminate if necessary. Which, translated from assassin bureaucrat speak, means if he so much as sneezes in a suspicious way, stab him. The town hasn't changed. Same tilted houses, same old gossip mill. You walk past the bakery and, yep, still smells like burnt hopes and raisins. You enter the tavern quietly. No one recognizes you until someone does. "Oi, it's the goat thief!" shouts a man who once owed you 3 pints and a fistfight. You flee, again, into the church that you may have accidentally burned part of years ago. Long story. Eventually, you sneak into your uncle's manor dressed as a chimney sweep. Dreg's idea, you still smell like soot and regret. You climb down the chimney into a study and land on a table full of cheese. Uncle Edric appears, older, wider, with a mustache that looks like it could legally vote. He doesn't recognize you, yet. You pretend to be hired help. He buys it, because, of course he does, he hasn't cleaned a fireplace in his life. You follow him discreetly, and honestly, he's boring. He eats cheese, he yells at mice, he reads letters out loud, which makes eavesdropping very convenient. Turns out he's not plotting treason, he's plotting a surprise wedding for his third wife, who is 24. He's 70. You try not to gag audibly. The suspicious activity you're here for? He's moving gold to buy her a carriage shaped like a swan. That's it. You report this to the guild via coded message. They reply, abort. But if carriage is real, send sketches. You're relieved. You don't want to kill Uncle Edric, mostly because you owe him 5 coins and your first deck of marked cards. Still, things get complicated when Edric stumbles upon you unmasked. His eyes narrow. "Don't I know you?" You panic, say, "No, I'm Cedric from the Soot Agency." He buys it, again, which tells you 2 things. Your disguise skills have improved. Edric is an idiot. You leave the manor that night, mission complete. You even steal a wheel of cheese as a trophy. But just when you're about to leave town, someone grabs your arm in the shadows. It's your cousin, Marin, the one who once locked you in a well for taking her hairbrush. She hisses, "I know who you are, and I know why you're here." You freeze. Then she adds, "I'll give you 10 silver if you make Edric disappear. I want the manor." You pause. You consider. You ultimately decline, not because of ethics, but because you really don't want to go back into that cheese-smelling house ever again. Historians still argue whether assassins maintain emotional detachment or if personal ties interfered with their cold, calculated missions. You can confirm, when family's involved, everything gets weird. You leave town under cover of darkness, hiding your face and the cheese in equal measure. Back at the guild, Dreg's drinking something that might be soup, might be poison. He raises an eyebrow. "You killed the uncle?" "Nope." He nods. "Good. Wait, really?" "Family jobs are messy," he says, picking his teeth with a dagger. "Better to let them rot naturally." You think about that for a moment, and for the first time in weeks, you smile. No bloodshed, no frogs, just a mildly bruised ego and a wheel of cheese. Could be worse. You fall asleep that night dreaming of a swan-shaped carriage careening off a cliff. Some dreams are weirdly specific. You're barely awake when someone throws a bundle of fabric at your head. "Put this on," Dreg says. "You've got a fashion show to attend." You blink. "A what?" He grins. "Noble banquet. You're crashing it. Target, Baron Gerwald, crime, existing while annoying. Wear the tights." "Yes, tights." The outfit is something. It's technically black, but so shiny it reflects your regrets. The shirt has puff sleeves so large they could shelter orphans. The boots squeak. The dagger bulge is unmistakable. You look like a court jester who murdered a crow and wore its soul. Still, you blend in. Nobles dress like this all the time. Everyone at the banquet looks like a walking tapestry. The ballroom is vast and echoey. Candles flicker. Laughter tinkles like bells, if the bells were drunk and overly impressed with themselves. You glide in, holding a tray of drinks. Yes, you're a waiter. Somehow, being a servant is a recurring theme in your assassin journey. It's humbling, also itchy. You locate Baron Gerwald. He's every bad story rolled into a man. Puffy red face, double chin with its own personality, powdered wig that might be sentient. He laughs loudly, claps too hard, and gropes anything within reach. Charming. Your mission? Poison his wine. Simple, clean, classic. Except, you're not the only one trying. Across the room, you spot another servant. He's holding a goblet and looking a little too purposeful. You lock eyes, he narrows his, there's a mutual nod. You both know. It's a poisoner duel. This is new. You follow him as he weaves toward Gerwald. He slips powder into a goblet, then you swap it. He notices, swaps again. You cough, knock over a fruit bowl, melons fly, someone screams, someone else proposes marriage. Chaos. You both grab goblets and present them to the Baron at the exact same time. He laughs. 2 drinks, don't mind if I do, and downs both. You freeze. You both watch him. Nothing happens. Then he burps, loudly, says, spicy, and returns to fondling the roast pig. You and the other assassin retreat in confusion. You meet behind the stables. Who hired you? You ask. Bishop Ephraim, he says. You? No idea. I got a note under my pillow. Typical. You agree to split the fee, assuming either of you gets paid. He introduces himself as Berwin. You decide not to kill him, mostly because he gave you half a meat pie. Back inside, Gerwald is now dancing. Violently, he stomps, he sweats, he bellows about tax reform. Then he collapses. Everyone cheers. Apparently this is normal. Later, you find out he's not dead, just very sleepy. The wine, not poisoned, just spiced with something called ghost pepper root, which apparently induces temporary paralysis and vivid dreams about owls. The mission technically failed. But no one dies, and you get free dessert. Win? Back at the guild, Dreg is carving a duck. Not cooking, just carving. You don't ask. You explain the night. He chuckles. Banquets are tricky, too many variables. Also, those puffy sleeves, fire hazard. You toss the outfit into the fire, it hisses like a cursed spirit. Historians still argue whether high society assassinations were ever real or just political gossip turned murderous bedtime stories. You now know they're real, but also weird, and sometimes involve multiple people accidentally drugging a man into nap time. You fall asleep dreaming of roast pigs, exploding melons, and a baron who thinks he's an owl. This job never stops surprising you. And your tights will haunt you forever. You wake up with one eye crusted shut, a sore back, and the vague memory of someone serenading a dead chicken at the guild last night. Probably Berwin. He's been crashing on your floor since the banquet incident. He snores like a bear being slowly strangled by its taxes. The morning briefing is scribbled on the wall in chalk, very professional. Surveillance assignment, target, Lady Mavra, don't get caught, no stabbing, yet. There's also a doodle of a duck with a knife. You suspect Dreg's been bored. So now, your task is, sit in a pig trough and spy on a noblewoman. You travel to a village so quiet, it might be dead. Lady Mavra's manor looms on the edge of it, all sharp spires and stone gargoyles shaped like disappointed parents. You dig yourself into a trough outside the garden wall and settle in, cozy. Your surveillance begins. Day 1, she walks in the garden muttering to herself. You think it's magic. Turns out, she's composing poetry about carrots. Day 2, she receives a visitor, a man in blue robes. You lean forward. They exchange scrolls. You write in your little spy journal like a very determined raccoon with a grudge. Day 3, it rains. Hard. Your trough becomes a bath. The pigs leave. You stay. Day 4, Lady Mavra kills a chicken with a spoon. No explanation, just rage. You worry for your safety and the cutlery. You sneak into the manor at night, dressed as a wandering chimney sweep again. At this point, it's basically your brand. You find letters, coded, sealed, marked with the symbol of the rival kingdom. Bingo. Treason or cross-border book club? Historians still argue. You lean towards suspicious enough. Then, creak. The door opens. Lady Mavra stands there, candle in one hand, crossbow in the other. You freeze. She says, "Are you the spy or the chicken poet?" You say, "Both." She blinks, then laughs. "Tell the guild I don't work cheap." You run. You don't stop until you hit a cart full of cabbages and apologize to it in 3 languages. The next morning, you report your findings to Dreg. He grunts. She's clever. That makes her dangerous. Or valuable. You ask what happens now. He shrugs. They'll probably recruit her. You blink. We're hiring targets now? Budget cuts, he says. You get paid in turnips. Again. You go to sleep that night feeling like a soggy ferret with commitment issues. Your notes are soaked, your boots are still squishy, your only friend is a pig that refuses to look you in the eye. Historians still argue whether espionage and assassination were distinct trades or constantly blurred by necessity. You're here to confirm they're blurred, they're wet, and they smell like cabbage. At least you didn't get stabbed. This time, tonight, the guild decides it's time for a makeover. Not for you, heaven forbid, but for your tools. Madam V insists the new recruits are relying too much on brute force and not enough on elegance. Which is ironic, coming from a woman currently sharpening a dagger with a piece of skull. So, you're sent to the blacksmith. Not just any blacksmith, old Bruga, whose breath smells like boiled pennies and regret, and whose workshop looks like it's halfway through exploding. Her tools are older than the king. Some might be cursed. One is definitely just a fork taped to a stick. She eyes you. You want quiet kills or flashy ones? You blink. What's the difference? She hands you a dagger shaped like a question mark and a vial of something labeled no. That's it. Just no. You don't ask questions. You don't want the answers. The next job is a dual target execution. 2 rival spice merchants feuding over nutmeg territory. Yes, nutmeg. Apparently, in this town, it's more valuable than gold and twice as flammable. Your targets, Reynard and Otto. Both men are loud, suspicious, and constantly surrounded by bodyguards and cinnamon. The plan? Get them to eliminate each other. You start by forging notes. One from Otto, calling Reynard a fraud and a goat-faced scoundrel. Another from Reynard, declaring Otto a spice thief and a closet clove addict. You deliver the letters. They take the bait. Within hours, both are frothing. Their bodyguards meet in the street. Words fly, then fists, then a sack of paprika. It's chaos. Someone throws a chicken. You sneak into Otto's spice shop during the brawl. You find his ledger, bribes, debts, proof he paid off the town guard with cinnamon buns. Scandalous. You leave it on Reynard's doorstep. Then you head to Reynard's warehouse. You find barrels of nothing. They're full of sand. He's been selling fake spice. You document it. Slap a label on one. Reynard's Authentic Desert Blend TM. By sunset, both men are in jail. You didn't lift a blade. Madam V is thrilled. Elegant, she says, twirling your forged notes like a proud aunt at a forgery recital. Dreg grumbles. Too much paperwork. Should have just stabbed them. You get paid in coin and a small satchel of actual nutmeg, which you guard with your life. The black market loves this stuff. It's like medieval cryptocurrency. Historians still argue whether medieval assassins used manipulation and forged letters to provoke rivals into conflict, or if these tales are literary embellishments. You now know? Oh, it's real, it's effective, and it requires surprisingly good penmanship. You sleep well that night, belly full of roasted eel and a sense of smug satisfaction. You didn't get hurt, you didn't get caught, and you successfully weaponized gossip. You dream of spice wars, counterfeit cinnamon, and a dagger that smells faintly of cloves. You might not be rich, you might not be respected, but for once, you feel clever. Your streak of cleverness lasts exactly 36 hours. Because tonight, you're sent to spy on the local clergy. Yes, the church. You're not thrilled. The last time you entered a holy building, you set fire to a hymnal with your elbow and got chased out by an angry nun wielding a ladle. You're not exactly welcome in divine spaces. But here you are, assigned to investigate Father Belric, a priest suspected of smuggling heretical scrolls and meeting with hooded figures in the graveyard at night. Which, to be fair, does sound a bit shady, or possibly just goth. Your orders are strict. No violence, no disruption, no stealing church wine. You cross your heart, then immediately lie. You begin your surveillance from a very unholy place, a crypt. You hide inside an old stone coffin with a crack large enough for you to breathe and small enough for a rat to crawl in and scream at you. Which it does, twice. You wait. Night falls, the graveyard fills with fog like some playwright's dramatic dream. And there he is, Father Belric, cloaked, silent, holding a lantern, meeting a hooded stranger who whispers something about the books being ready. You scribble this in your spy journal. You also doodle a skull for flair. The two figures exchange something small and shiny, then part ways. You follow the stranger, slow, careful steps through headstones and mud. He leads you into a bakery. You watch, confused, as he hands the shiny object to the baker and disappears. You enter, posing as a customer. The baker offers you a scone. It's amazing. Turns out, the heretical scrolls are underground recipes. Belric has been helping townsfolk preserve banned spice blends after the Nutmeg War fiasco. The hooded figures, just secret chefs. You feel disappointed. You were hoping for cults, or curses, or at least a skeleton with a monocle. Still, you gather what you can. Proof that Belric is technically hiding something, even if it's just nutmeg muffins. You return to the guild. Madame V is silent, then says, "So, no demons?" "Nope." "No dead bodies?" "Only one, but that was a sleeping drunk in the alley." She sighs. "Shame, we had a whole exorcist subplot planned. Dreg suggests you eat the evidence." You decline, but you do keep the muffin. It's exquisite. Historians still argue whether clergy figures were ever part of organized underground movements, or if local gossip exaggerated their nightly routines. You now suspect most mysterious cloaked meetings were just people trading butter without taxes. Still, your report goes into the guild's archives under suspicious pastry operations. You're getting good at this. Not the killing part, necessarily, but the not dying part, you're thriving. Sort of. That night, you sit by the fire and ask Dreg if he ever thought of quitting. He laughs for a full minute, coughs violently, then says, "Every day, but what else would I do? Sell socks?" You picture Dreg folding socks in a shop, arguing with a customer about whether toes are a myth. You nod. Fair. You fall asleep with a scone in your hand and the vague fear that someday you'll be the one someone else spies on. You check under your bed, just in case. Tonight, it's not the job that scares you. It's the people you work with. You're assigned to a 4-person job, which is basically medieval for group project from hell. The mission? Eliminate a corrupt tax collector named Brannick. He's hoarded wealth, extorted townsfolk, and insulted Madame V's hat. That last part might be the real reason. Your team? Berwin, still snoring on your floor, still using cheese as currency. Nessa, poisons everything and smiles too much when people bleed. Toad, no one knows his real name, or if he's human. The plan is ambitious. Nessa laces Brannick's wine. You and Berwin provide distractions. Toad, he does Toad things. That's the plan. That's the entire plan. You break into Brannick's estate disguised as a bard troupe. You carry a lute. You can't play. You strum once and summon a sound that makes a nearby cat flee the kingdom. Inside, the party is lively. Nobles laugh. Servants sweat. Brannick sits on a throne-like chair, chewing meat with the grace of a brick. You and Berwin perform a dramatic reading of The Ballad of the Flatulent Baron. It goes poorly, but it does distract everyone long enough for Nessa to switch the goblets. Then Brannick sneezes. Then he explodes. Not literally, just violently vomits all over his own wig, then collapses into the roast goose. Guests scream. One faints. Toad bites someone. Chaos. You retreat into the wine cellar. Nessa joins you, covered in feathers. "Too much poison?" she asks, licking her fingers. "Maybe," you say. "Oops. Guards are storming the halls. You need an exit." Toad points at a barrel and grunts. You hesitate, then realize he's right. The wine barrels lead to the sewer system. You crawl in. It smells like despair and raisins, probably from Toad. You don't ask. You float downriver, all 4 of you in separate barrels. It's a very undignified assassin escape. A bard on the bank sees you and starts composing a ballad on the spot. You vow to stab him later. You regroup in the woods. Brannick is definitely dead. Your team is mostly alive. Toad is eating a beetle. Madame V debriefs you via pigeon. The note says, effective, messy, try not to poison the roast next time. P.S. The pigeon's name is Gary. You consider retiring. Berwin offers you cheese. You reconsider. Historians still argue whether medieval assassination teams coordinated like military units or resembled chaotic guilds with shared grudges and no sense of timing. You can confirm it's the second one. Always the second. That night, you sleep with a dagger in one boot, your pay in the other, and the faint knowledge that someone probably wrote a poem about the goose incident already. You don't want to read it. You dream of better plans, cleaner kills, normal coworkers, and a future where the phrase "Toad's biting again" isn't part of your daily vocabulary. You should have seen it coming. The whispers, the side glances, the way your name vanished from the job board. Assassins don't retire, they just get reassigned, permanently. It begins when Berwin disappears. No note, no screaming, just gone. His room still smells like onions and regret, but the cheese hoard is untouched, which is how you know something's wrong. You ask Dreg. He doesn't look up from sharpening a spoon. Berwin ran his mouth. Too loud. Too public. You pause. So? He knew too much. Trusted too many. That night, a letter appears under your door. Your record is inconsistent. Your discretion, questionable. Your future, short. To the guild. You swallow hard. And just like that, you go from assassin to target. You pack. Fast. You grab only what matters. Money, blade, spare pants, and a muffin. You leave behind your journal and your emergency backup spoon. R.I.P. Spoonette. You run. Not far, just far enough to buy time. You hide in a woodshed outside the village. It smells like mold and fox pee. You've been in worse places. Remember that chimney? You survive on rats, roots, and paranoia. You check behind every tree, sleep in 2-hour shifts, dream of Nessa slipping poison into your tea, imagine Toad chewing on your arm like a drumstick. On the third night, Dreg finds you. He sits beside your hiding hole, doesn't look at you, just mutters, "It's not personal, it's protocol." You whisper, "So you're here to kill me?" He shrugs. Was. Long silence. Then he says, "The guild's getting sloppy. Madame V's been taking contracts from both sides. You asked too many questions." You blink. "I asked where the soap went." "Exactly." He stands, drops a pouch, inside, coin, a forged travel pass, and a new name. "Reinvent yourself," he says. "Go east, become a monk, or a baker, or a monk baker, something quiet." You ask why he's helping. He shrugs again. "I liked your jokes." Then he vanishes. Historians still argue whether rogue assassins often faked their deaths to escape their guilds, or whether most simply got caught and erased. You now know. It's possible, barely, but only if someone chooses to look away. You travel east, wearing a beard made of horsehair and a tunic so ugly no one makes eye contact. You arrive at a monastery. They ask your name. You say, "Brother Moth, old habits die hard." They ask what you're good at. You say, "Quiet things." They nod. And so begins your strange second life. You pray. You bake. You sweep. You breathe. But every night, you check the shadows. Every creak makes you flinch. You hide a dagger in the flour sack. Just in case. The monastery is peaceful, too peaceful. You don't trust it. They feed you warm bread, teach you chants, and give you a blanket that doesn't smell like wet goat. For the first time in years, no one hands you a poisoned wine glass or a cursed scroll disguised as tax paperwork. You don't know what to do with that much calm. Your new name, Brother Moth, has stuck. The others think it's poetic. You think it's ironic. One monk even embroidered it on your robe. You smiled awkwardly, then hid the robe and never wore it again. By Abbas, you tend gardens, plant cabbages, chase squirrels, accidentally make friends with a crow who seems unusually interested in shiny objects and your personal space. By night, you lie awake and replay every mission, every blade, every mistake. You wonder if Dreg made it out, if Nessa's still giggling her way through noble parties, if Toad ever learned to use a fork. And most of all, you wonder if the guild is still watching. Because one evening, while sorting carrots, you find a coin. Not just any coin, a guild-marked silver, old, worn, left right in your garden bed, half buried like an insult. You freeze, look around, no footsteps, no sign. But someone knows. You try to stay calm. That night, you walk the grounds, checking for shadows. You spot a figure near the chapel, hooded still, clearly watching you. You approach. It's a scarecrow. You exhale, then scream anyway. The monks don't ask. They've grown used to your occasional late-night existential howling. The next week, a letter arrives, no name, just a message, burnt at the edges. Your absence is tolerated, for now. You burn the letter, you burn the shovel you touched it with, you burn the cabbage patch, no risks. The crow judges you from a tree. You go on pretending. Historians still argue whether ex-assassins truly found peace in isolated religious communities or if they simply hid in plain sight, twitching at shadows until their last breath. You know the answer. You're living it. Months pass. You get better at the role. You lead prayers, bake impressive loaves. One even wins a local fair. The judges called it soulfully crusty. But the edge never dulls. You still count exits, still note who sits where, still cut your apples in precisely the same way with the same hidden blade in your sleeve. Then, one day, a traveler visits the monastery. Tall, limping slightly, a long gray cloak, a voice that's all smoke and gravel. You freeze, Dreg. He doesn't acknowledge you. He sits through service, eats soup, leaves a coin at the altar. As he walks away, he drops something. You wait till dusk to collect it. It's a folded paper, blank on one side, on the other. The guild has a new leader. V is gone. Berwin lives. Toad has a beard. You're safe, for now. Don't be stupid. You laugh, quietly, alone. You cry a little too. You bury the note under your favorite cabbage. That night, you sleep without your dagger under the pillow. Still alert, but maybe, just maybe, ready to breathe a little deeper. Time passes in gentle, soft-edged seasons. You till soil, you hum broken tavern songs while hanging laundry. You give the crow a name, Mr. Beekman, and he starts leaving you gifts, buttons, teeth, one time an actual ring from a minor noble house. You don't ask questions, you just nod and say thank you, like a very polite crypt keeper. The nightmares fade, mostly. You still jolt awake some nights, reaching for a blade that isn't there. But the panic ebbs faster. The monks don't pry. One of them, Brother Ansel, just hands you a mug of warm cider and sits beside you in silence. That's what healing looks like now. Cider, crows, quiet. Then, one misty dawn, a traveler arrives at the monastery gate. He's young, nervous, tries to hide a limp under oversized boots. You recognize the signs. He hands you a note. No name, just 6 words. He's yours now. Train him well. You look at the boy, pale, shaky, eyes darting like he's waiting for a crossbow bolt that never comes. You sigh. First lesson, you say, ushering him toward the garden. Don't stand where the birds poop. He nods too earnestly and gets pooped on immediately. You smile. So it begins again. He digs carrots with terrible posture. You correct him. He asks what the guild is. You lie. A baking guild. Very strict. Lots of kneading. He seems to believe it. You'll teach him what matters. How to vanish. How to stay alive. How to recognize when a pigeon is carrying a message versus just being judgmental. You won't teach him the dark stuff, not yet. But one day he'll need it, maybe, maybe not. Historians still argue whether retired assassins ever passed their skills on in secret, cloaked in farming or faith, or if that's just a comforting myth. You know the truth. It's not myth. It's necessity. Later that evening, you sit by the hearth, the boy snoring softly nearby, Mr. Beekman perched like a feathery gargoyle overhead. You take out a coin, one of those coins. You toss it into the fire. The past burns quietly, and you whisper more to yourself than anyone, may the next generation be luckier. And so you lie back, finally still, under a sky smudged with ash and stars, listening to the slow crackle of a fire that's not meant for destruction, but for warmth. Your hands, once calloused by blades and doorframes and betrayal, now smell faintly of garlic and rosemary. Your knees still ache when it rains. Your instincts still flinch at shadows, but your breath comes easier now. You've lived through things most people only whisper about after 3 cups of something strong. You've crawled through gutters, danced with poison, vanished from windows just as the world came crashing in behind you. And somehow, despite it all, you're here, breathing, teaching, watching a new life stumble awkwardly into its own strange rhythm. There will always be a part of you still listening for footsteps in the dark, still calculating the nearest exit. But there's also a part that lets the quiet in, that plants things and lets them grow, that drinks tea without checking for bitterness. Tonight, sleep comes slowly but softly. The crow murmurs from the rafters, the boy snores like a bear wrapped in wool, and somewhere out there, the world spins madly on. Nobles plot, blades glint, alliances shift. But for now, you rest. If you're still awake, close your eyes. Let the fire fade to embers behind your eyelids. Let the air grow heavy and kind. Let the chaos of your former life dissolve like sugar in warm milk. Tomorrow, perhaps the boy will ask where scars come from, or how to move without being seen, or whether you ever truly forget the first time you had to run. But that's tomorrow. For now, just breathe. And let yourself fall away,